guys, quick look at the engine bay before I start tearing into it. We still have some of the bracing off on the back because I haven't finished mounting the coilover stuff, still perfecting that kind of things. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of the gist. I don't have my covers on or the carbon strut brace, so you guys will need to remove that. Everything else is basically gonna be the same. We're gonna take off, you know, this trim piece, the back cover, the intercooler's gotta come out of the way, intakes, charge pipes to get to the valve cover. We're gonna have to take the fan out. We're gonna have to take the underbelly pans off. So let's go ahead and get this bad boy all apart. How do you get the GoPro charged? So we missed a little bit of teardown. We took the right side or driver's side airbox out. We took the passenger side airbox out. We took both charge pipes out. Obviously, as I mentioned before, kind of my rear covers and brace was removed already. I removed the rear plastic panel that covers the back of the valve cover. We're gonna go ahead and remove this little piece here that helps kind of hold the valve cover down. I've also removed the wiring harness for the coil packs and injectors. I've removed the coil packs. There are 3 8mm nuts on the grounds for the harness. Be sure to not lose those, and 2 T25s to hold the harness down. They're small, don't drop them. Charge pipes and inlet pipe out. Basically, that's everything we've done so far. I did undo the harness here, about to lift up the intercooler and start going after the valve cover as well as the fan and the inlet for the turbo. And once we get that all sorted, we're gonna drain the coolant. Once the coolant's drained, we'll be able to really tear into this bad boy and get the line off the water pump and the belts off and everything else off, and we'll continue showing you how that's done. So let's go ahead and keep moving forward. Guys, we're about to pop out the eccentric shaft actuator here on the M2 race car, but I wanted to show you guys here first. Put an Allen key in. When I found mine, it was in the all the way down position up against the stopper. So you're gonna have to back the, you can see the gear rotating there. So you're gonna have to back that off. You're gonna turn it the clockwise direction to get enough room to pull your stopper out, which will allow us to go further than the stopper will allow for. I'm gonna have to put this down for 2 seconds and show you guys here. The stopper's almost screwed out. It's right there. I'm about to pull that bad boy out, see if I can get a little shot of it. So the actuator's got to be held via either a wrench or your Allen key here, as it does have a lot of spring pressure, but here you can see the pin or the stopper. So we've got that removed. Now that that's removed, we can continue to move our eccentric shaft in the clockwise direction here, or counterclockwise, my bad, to get it completely off of this actuator here. So let me go ahead and flip you guys back up and show you that. Here's a closer up look of the gear completely turned out of the way and the hole for the eccentric shaft actuator. Our spark plug well bodies are removed. You only have to remove the 2 front ones to be able to access this stopper here in the back, which bolts right there. Now that we've gone ahead and removed the old one, we're gonna install our new one. I've also gone ahead and wiped down the mating surfaces here, as it's a little bit easier with the actuator out of the place. So still got our wrench in place so that we can control it coming down. Let's go ahead and grab our new one, which is in the box over here. So we got a few parts for the crank hub. We got our new hardware here, crank bolt, cam bolts. We got a crank seal, vacuum pump cover. We have the actuator in here. The crank hub is actually over in the shop. I'll show you guys that in a little bit, as well as some of the other parts. This is what the actuators look like when you first pull them out of the bag. They come in an anti-static bag, nicely wrapped and protected. So here's the new BMW actuator. Let's go ahead and get this bad boy installed on the car. Give you a quick look at the old one here. Old one's right here. So yeah, same thing, just nice and new, kind of function the way that it should. So I'm gonna clip you guys back up and get this bad boy in. Kind of same thing, you're gonna have to drop it in and kind of finesse the gear. You're gonna have to kind of pull this up and down as you finesse the gear and rotate the shaft here via an Allen key. And you can see the Allen head there, hopefully right in the top. Yeah, go ahead and get it in. right, guys, so we've gone ahead and removed the center underbelly pan and the forward underbelly pan. I do have the Turner underbelly pan. If anyone remembers or has seen our previous videos, you will see us talk about that and install it. So I've gone ahead and popped the heat exchanger lines right here on both sides. This one I put back on, and I've gone ahead and popped the other smaller line going to the radiator here. We're letting everything drain. While that is finishing up, we're gonna bring the car down and start removing the fan and the upper radiator hose. Forgot to mention, we did take the two lower T25s out of the radiator and the T25 out of the water pump, holding it to the fan shroud. So we're gonna go ahead and lift this radiator up, or this fan out. Now I'm also gonna take off both this smaller line and this upper line on the radiator side to gain more access for the radiator to slide through. All right, guys, I just want to show you that. Just used a punch. I went through right here at the kind of outer edge. There's a section where it's glued together there, and we've gone ahead and punched right through there, and then use that to pry against the body of the motor, and that one's out. Now we gotta get the small one out. There's the vacuum pump cover out, and now we're gonna remove the secondary cover there. All right, guys, so I just rotated the motor over and pinned the flywheel via one of these pins right here, these timing tool pins. The kits usually come with two. I've bought an extra one of these because every now and again, one will get slightly bent if your flywheel holder tool slips or anything, so I always just keep an extra one on deck. I've also gone ahead and installed our cam tool with everything just slightly loose. I'm gonna go ahead and thread in our bolts here, hold it down to the cylinder head, and then once we do that, we're also gonna slip on our trigger wheel tool. Let me suck these down. I'm gonna show you here, we got everything set up. So here's our flywheel holder tool. You can see, hopefully, I've marked the tooth in the center red just to help as I'm looking from underneath the car to see when visually it's coming around, either in the future or when we go to check our timing when we're done. Also just to help you guys visualize where this little tool is locking onto. So we have our flywheel holder tool in. We also have our flywheel locking pin in. If you guys can see this little red string here, it goes up to a gold pin right there that goes in the side of the motor. The bracket just to its left there, where my finger is pointing at, has to be bent slightly up, or you can remove it with a little E8 or E6 head bolt. Generally, I just kind of slightly bend them. They're a very weak bracket, and there's plenty of room on the fuel line here to flex slightly upward and out of the way. So that's how I do that. Everything else is drained. We've got the fan out. We're about to break the crank pulley. I've gone ahead and pulled the vacuum covers, as you guys saw. I have my oil pump, or oil pump chain tensioning tool in. All right, guys, so we've already gone ahead and broke our cam bolts loose. Before we did that, we also broke our crank hub bolt loose. Need a wrench to turn it. It's not super loose, but I broke most of the tension off of it. Once we broke the crank bolt and then the cam bolts, I broke this tensioner loose. So I'm gonna go ahead and back the tensioner out, or the timing chain. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this Vanos trigger wheel or cam trigger wheel tool out and completely back these bolts out and pull our Vanos actuators out of the way after we pull our timing chain tensioner out. And then once we do that, I'll be able to actually pull the bolt on the crank hub. And I also need to pull the pins on the timing cassette so that I can lift that up and down and kind of shimmy the crank hub out. So I'll show you guys that now. So I'm just down here removing the timing chain tensioner. I'll show you guys here in a second. Here's our tensioner pulled out. Zap our timing tool out of the way. Now we need to get our timing pins. The upper cylinder head is a T40 and the lower lock pin is a T45. We also have 2 E8 bolts here. Break these. Go ahead and get our lower one. You'll see the timing cassette wants to fall over now. Now the crank hub bolt is loose. We're going to completely back our crank hub bolt out. We're going to kind of lift up our timing cassette at the same time. A helpful tip is to use 2 of your old, or if you're doing a different type of crank hub, but with a crank bolt capture, it comes with new bolts for the Vargas crank hub, but some of you other crank hubs may reuse these. But use 2 of your flywheel holding bolts to the crank hub. Pull your crank hub out. We have 2 bolts in the crank hub. Our timing cassette is free. We're gonna hold this up out of the way, and with our other hand, pull our crank hub out. Here's our crank hub right here. Set that to the side, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull the whole timing cassette up, and you'll see our main drive sprocket gear is also just chilling in the chain. So we're gonna go ahead and set this to the side as well. You wanna keep this nice and clean. For those of you guys who are using it, most of us do. So now that our main drive gear is out and the crank hub is out, we are essentially done. There's a little more cleanup. We got to get this front main seal out of here. This is what it looks like. We got our old oil pump gear in there and the old crank seal, which we're going to remove. And then we'll replace that rear gear and the little holding piece there. But yeah, everything is out. Everything's looking good so far. So we're going to go ahead and keep moving forward. I'm going to get that seal out and the secondary gear and keep moving on. Now you'll see we'll pull the bolt out of the way, pull our intake actuator out of the way, set that aside. Now we'll do the same with the exhaust actuator. Helps to get the bolt out of the actuator to get it out. Otherwise, it'll be kind of stuck in the cam. So now we've gone ahead and pulled that. We'll just lay the chain down gently. Now we're going to continue removing our pins holding the timing cassette and fully loosen our crank hub. We got our secondary oil pump drive gear and the little retaining clip out. I'll show you what it looks like now. You can see the 2 holes where the retaining clip clips into, and you can see that there's no gear anymore. The crank just kind of holding the chain in place. It does fall down, but you can kind of slack it back over the crank if you want. Otherwise, it can just hang out. It's fine. Here's a little retaining clip. You do want to replace these. You also want to replace this because you do have these little grip discs that after they're torqued once, they kind of break off. And when you try and go torque it down again, it'll kind of kick sideways and you won't get the proper grip or torque that you need to hold it all together. So make sure to replace this as well. We're going to go ahead and install our new one with our new clip. I'll show you that here once we get it installed. But yeah, that's the gist. We got everything apart, timing cassette out. Give you a look at the timing cassette here. Pretty standard stuff. Anyways, let's keep moving forward. We're going to clean all our holes, wipe everything down real good, and start the reassembly. All right, guys, so I just wanted to give you a quick look at all the parts required to do your crank hub. There are some other stuff that you could do, like a tensioner or the chain or the upper guide or the actual main timing chain guide, but this is the basis of what you need. So we got some new cam bolts here, one for the intake, one for the exhaust. They're the same bolt. We got a new crank bolt here. It's necessary. We have our vacuum cap cover and our secondary timing chain cover. We have the oil pump drive gear, brand new, as well as our Vargas V2 spline lock crank hub. The main gear is now part of the crank hub. We have our bolts for our crank bolt capture, which is an add-on with the VTT crank hub. Highly recommend that. So you're going to need your retaining clip that I showed you guys just previously and a brand new BMW front main seal. So as I just showed you guys previously, the secondary oil pump drive gear is out. We are going to install that and the clip here now. So let's go ahead and get that done. All right, guys, got our new secondary oil pump drive gear and retaining clip in. Now we're ready to lower the timing cassette back down and put our crank hub in. So let's go ahead and get that done. Camera died, had to charge it for a second, but we did our initial torque of 75 foot-pounds or 100 meters on the Crankhub. We also have our timing tools on and our tensioner in, our timing tensioner. Let's see if you can see it through here. You can barely see it right there, kind of in the side of the block. So that's in and tight. We did tighten the cams, which we'll show you here in a bit, but we're gonna do the final torque on this Crankhub, which is an additional 270 degrees. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, guys, so we got our 270 degrees on our crank bolt. We're about to put in our front main seal and our vacuum cap covers and verify the timing, and then we will continue moving forward and show you guys how that's done. All right, guys, so after spinning the motor around 720 degrees on the crank and 360 degrees on the cam, so it's a 2-to-1 ratio, you got to turn the crank 2 revolutions to get it back to TDC 1. So after doing that, we pin the crank at the back. I'll show you that in a little bit. We put our tools on here at the front to make sure everything aligns good, which they do. Everything aligns perfect. Now that that's done, we went ahead and put in our front crankshaft main seal with our sealant. You can see here on the edge, there is some sealant. We'll link below that you need to use, a 2-stage primer, and we've gone ahead and put our upper vacuum cap in, and now we're gonna put our vacuum pump cover in and continue reassembly on this thing. But the next step is to remove our tensioning tool to set our timing up. So I've already gone ahead and backed it off. Now that I verified timing was correct, go ahead and back our tool out. And now we can go ahead and put our real tensioner in, which we'll go ahead and grab over here, sitting right here. Make sure it's clean, make sure it's got nothing on the crush washer. We'll go ahead and shove it back in, just tighten it down, and this torques to, I believe, 55 Newton meters. All right, guys, we just got the fin in. It's quite a pain in the butt. So we're gonna take the car up now and put the bolts in from below. We're gonna take a T25 head plastic screws and thread them into our radiator fan. All right, guys, so we've got everything put back together, complete and finalized, every bolt except for some of the underbelly pans on. We got some fresh coolant in the coolant tanks. We got 7 quarts of fresh oil and a fresh oil filter in the car. We've got the ignition on. We've got the Autel connected. This is not normally something that we kind of show, but this is something you have to do after doing a Crankhub or any really massive, engine work, timing work, stuff like that. So we're gonna go in here, we're gonna connect to the car. We're gonna do some services. We're gonna reset some adaptations. We're gonna relearn the start-stop position of the eccentric shaft. And then we're gonna do our Valvetronic startup relearn. It's kind of a slow process here. Kind of walk you guys through it real quick. But yeah, I mean, the car is back together. Time to start it. Crankhub first start, super excited. Super excited to get this thing back on the road and go get some track time. And now I don't have to worry about downshifting super hard or maybe even putting some flex fuel on the car and hurting the motor. So we're good to go. So first thing we're gonna do, we're just gonna go in here. We're just gonna auto scan the car. We're just gonna make sure there's no codes. If there is, we're gonna clear them. which I have these Valvetronic servo motor position sensors and all that stuff from having the motor apart and disconnected. So let's go ahead and erase all this stuff. All right guys, so now we go into service. We're gonna reset and clear all the adaptations. Powertrain, engine electronics, delete adaptations for the Vanos variable camshaft timing control. Oh, looks like the ignition turned off on us. Adaptation values were reset. We're gonna do all the DME stuff. New eccentric shaft actuator, crankhub done. I just did a crankhub on another M4 last week and did the eccentric shaft actuator while we were in there. It's not. We're gonna reset the limit positions on the eccentric shaft. Batteries, come on baby, let's go, let's go. That's the eccentric shaft. When you hear that, it's like normally, it shouldn't sound like that. If I redo it again, it'll probably sound a lot better because it was at the end stop from where I put it in at. Oh, that was weird. All right then. That's the first startup after doing the crank-up. She's good, she's healthy. All right guys, so we're doing the startup Valvetronic Relearn. It's got to go through 450 cycles to relearn the position of the Valvetronic, and then the car will be happy and healthy, ready to rip. All right guys, time to peel off the wrap.
If you like this video, be sure to check out the next one, and if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe and like the video. It helps a lot. Thanks, and see you in the next one.